So, yeah, you enjoying your lockdown then, Adrian?
Well, you're taking down my locks. Taking down. It doesn't work, does it? If you're having got two baldies and a hairdresser and a pair of scissors, you're getting carried away.
Somebody that I know, a friend of mine I follow on Twitter, used to know him in my Coventry days. Yeah. He's got a hairdressing salon, and he was an English teacher before that. It's really strange.
There's got to be a joke there, hasn't there?
Yeah, I can't think what it is.
No, right, now you tell me. If you'd give me an hour to prep.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, where were we? Oh, yeah, apologies before we start the podcast if you can hear vehicles going past us, because it's so blooming warm, even though it's the evening here, that we're recording this episode of the Comedy Slab. I've had to have the window open, so you might hear a tractor or two go whizzing past. This is the Comedy Slab podcast. I'm Shane O'Connor. He is Adrian Lacey. And as he rightly said, we haven't got a lock of hair between us. If you've never heard the Comedy Slab podcast before, what do? Well, we sit down every week and we choose a comedy. Sometimes I stand up, but then it's because I haven't got my rubber ring cushion with me. And it's very uncomfortable for an hour to sit here. We chat about what we like, what we didn't like, what we were keen on, what we weren't so keen on. And we give it, must get this right, we give it a mark out of 5 each, giving you a grand total of a score out of 10. We'll play you 3 clips as we go along over the hour to give you a flavour of what we've chosen. And we choose alternately, don't we? So it was my turn to choose this week. And before we do any of that, by the way, I just got to mention, our mate Adrian, who listens to the podcast avidly.
Oh, the other Adrian, yeah.
He was saying, he said the one thing, it was on our Facebook page. We've got a Facebook page if you want to go and have a look. We'll give you the address later, but it's at Comedy Slab. That's the best way to find us on most platforms. He was saying the one thing he likes, we were having a conversation about Mr. Winner. And it's a Spencer Jones thing. Remember the
Oh, we love Spencer Jones. Yeah.
Herbert Clunkerdunk. Well, it's him.
Same to you.
And Adrian was saying, when do you do it? And I said, I don't know. And he said, the one thing I do love about the Comedy Slab is when you chat about what's new and what's coming up and what's got another series and all that sort of stuff. So I said I'd mention it to you. So
there's only one thing he likes about this show.
You put it like that, I suppose. I suppose he did. Did he say that? I'm going to have to go and have a look.
It's the way you tell him, isn't it?
Yeah.
We better do the one thing he likes then, otherwise he won't like it.
Yeah. Have we got? Well, that was the only thing I was going to say to you. We must slab that one of the weeks. Although, is it too soon?
No, gosh, no. I desperately need a Spencer Jones fix. Anyway, we know he's got a wide repertoire. I mean, obviously he popped up in Upstart Crow, didn't he?
The Ricky Gervais thing, yes.
Indeed, yeah. Indeed. Have I got an award? Oh, let me see. Yes, I have got an award. He did it so much better.
Although, believe it or not, The Mind of Herbert Clunkerdunk was episode 63 of the Comedy Slab.
No way.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, yeah, and so we're on 101 Dalmatians now, aren't we?
We are. So, my turn to choose last week, as we were saying, and I kind of went all retro, didn't I? 1990...
7, I think, isn't it? 6?
7, I think. Yeah.
Might have been made in 6 and broadcast 7.
7, you're right. Yeah, 7. I think they made that one-off special in 2001. He hadn't wound enough people up, so he came back and did one more, didn't he?
You haven't said who you're talking about yet.
I'm going to tell him in a minute. The legend that is Chris Morris.
You are referring there, the extra one being the extra controversial child. Shall we say it's child safety for safety?
Well, yeah, it was all about paedophilia, wasn't it? And the way the press reacted and sensationalised it.
It was about our nervousness about paedophilia. And I will never forget the children kept in a filing cabinet for their own safety.
but he ridiculed the press and the way they reacted, and of course the press reacted like that to the programme and still couldn't see the trap that they'd fallen into, could they? But they know what they're doing, don't they? But they know who their audience is as well, so that's why they're doing it, I guess. Anyway, Chris Morris, Brass Eye was the programme that we decided to put on the Comedy Slab this week. And he went for one series. It was a series of 6 episodes, as I say, and then one much later in 2001. And we decided I decided to have a look at episode 6 of the collection, the last one, whether it was recorded in that order. As you mentioned, I think it was in last week's show that very often they recorded programmes out of order, didn't they? You're out of order.
You're well out of order. Bang out of order. That was EastEnders. Yeah. Although this might be different, might not be.
I think that's all that remains to be said about it, isn't it, really? Apart from, obviously, I love some of the, I was just looking at my notes and some of the names. He just, wasn't it Chris Morris who, for the day-to-day, famously had the news...
Collaterally
Sisters, yeah.
How did I guess you were talking about her? That's fantastic, isn't it?
Awesome names.
Maybe it gave inspiration to the people behind Toasted. Ray Purchase! And all those names.
Well, there is a Toast connection, actually, in this. Because the guy who directed it, Michael Cumming, also directed the Mark Steele lectures for TV.
Fantastic. I didn't know they were on TV in my ignorance. Never seen those.
Yeah, and Toast.
Right.
So he directed Toast as well, so maybe you got something there. Anyway, I need to guess. Well, I don't need to guess. I mean, this is our own construct that's now... talk about being hoisted by your own petard, but I mean... Well,
yeah, it's your petard. It's my leotard.
I didn't even know we owned a petard. Never mind being hoisted by it. And... I'm just looking at the credits of Porridge here. Ronald Lacey there, just popped up.
Oh, now you tell me.
Yeah, your famous uncle.
Which
cousin.
channel have you got on that he's just appeared on? You should be listening to me.
Hang on.
And not watching.
Yesterday. That's the one owned by Paul McCartney, isn't it, that channel, I think. So I've got to tell you what you think of Brass Eye. And a score as well. Do you want me to give you a score that I think you'll give it?
Yeah, I think we should do. Yeah.
Okay.
And anything we do now is set for the next 100 episodes. So bear in mind.
Oh God.
You are laying the ground for more of the same.
Okay. I'm going to get off this unicycle then because I don't want that to be the same every week.
I thought it was working for you.
It's killing me, crotch, I tell you. So I was, especially in this heat, it's very sweaty. Anyway, I've seen the doctor, and she says there's nothing you can... I said, have a look at that. She said, do you know what? I wouldn't put that back in my trousers if I were you.
Are we back to constrictors? No, carry on.
I would, more of a puff adder. What I would say, I'm just keep it brief. I'm going to say, I think you like me. Think this is one of the classics, one of the pantheon of comedic endeavours.
I think it's pronounced Python.
Pantheon. Monty Pantheon. And
Patreon. Yeah, that's what we need.
Yeah. And I would say it's a 4 for you, Maureen. Okay? So
well, I literally don't know anyway, so even if I was inclined to tell you, I couldn't.
Okay. So that's my prediction for the future. Okay. Shall we have a clip?
And then give you a clip round the ear, mate.
And then you can give us a headline and tell us what you thought of it.
Yours.
It's a spoof news programme. I read somewhere the title Brass Eye came from 2 popular current affairs shows at the time.
I always thought it was something to do with brass tacks, and then I've got to think what the eye one is.
Public Eye. There was a program called Public Eye.
Oh no, I don't remember that.
So it became Brass Eye, which
right.
I've always thought the titles were. I mean, even the Day to Day, I thought was just brilliant. A brilliant title because it's as generic as they normally are, isn't it? Really.
There was a show called On the Hour, which went out on Radio 4 at 5:30. I'm sure they deliberately did that.
It was the 6:30 comedy show, wasn't it? Yeah, On the Hour. Well, the On the Hour.
6.
That's the timeline for this, isn't it? It was On the Hour, the Day to Day, and then the BBC turned down Brass Eye. And that's why.
I think it would have been a different Brass Eye if they hadn't turned it down. They'd have toned it down. Can I just quickly say, sorry, while we're on influences and titles and other related programs, I know this is an audio podcast. Obviously, you and I tragically can see each other via FaceTime, but the opening titles where Chris Morris apes. Well, there's 2 influences. One goes back hundreds of years, and one is a more recent TV one. Do you know both of those? This is for the benefit of our listeners. I'm going to do the movement. It's like this, not like that. It's more up. Is it more like that or that?
Well, you need more legs than that, to be honest with you.
That's true.
You're not going to do just with those two, are you, really?
I've got nothing to stand on.
He turns into Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man, doesn't he?
Oh, I trust you to know the name. Vitruvian, did you say?
Vitruvian.
Vitruvian.
Yeah.
What's that mean?
It was a sketch that Da Vinci did, if I'm right in saying that.
I couldn't get the bloody joke. Oh no, that's Pete Dust. You know that drawing done by what's his name, Da Vinci? I couldn't see the bloody joke. Because all these fig leaves have to blow in front of their. Yeah, carry on.
It was some sketch about something to do with anatomy, wasn't it? About and
yeah. Isn't that the place in the universe as well?
I don't know. I always thought it was something to do with anatomy and the fact that, like, from the elbow to the tip of the forefinger on a man is a cubit and something is a stride and all this sort of malarkey. Right. I think it was all to do with measurement and something like that. But anyway, it's World in Action is the reference, isn't it? Of course, it was.
It is, yes.
It was. And what was the other one? Did you say there was another influence?
No, I meant there are two. It's two in one, really. Because World in Action was aping the Da Vinci, and then Morris is doing World in Action is doing Da Vinci, which is quite clever.
Very clever, yeah.
A kind of line of references. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
I think the music is very clever as well because it always goes on too long, doesn't it? As well, it goes dung 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 dung, and you think it's got to finish now, dung dung dung, and it just never does.
And they push it and push it and push it, and then it's the only music of that nature in that type of show that you just end up laughing. Well, I did. That's the only response because it's so damn ridiculous. And the visuals that go with it, of course, folding on themselves.
I was going to say, is Chris Morris billed as... Does he introduce himself as Chris Morris? Or does he, I can't remember whether he does or not.
I think he does. Christopher Morris.
Yeah. Because it is aping these current affairs news kind of programs. On this particular one, we catch up with Chris Morris, who's in the gallery doing a piece to camera, this like kind of live thing piece to camera before he goes out to his reporter Austin Tasseltine. Love the name. And that's it really. We catch up with Chris at the start of the show in the gallery.
Good evening. Now, this is the nerve centre of tonight's programme. To help paint a true picture of the state of Britain, we have live surveillance cameras out. One of them has a reporter stuck on the front. Austin Tasseltine. Austin, what are you doing?
I'm at a garage in the centre of Clapton in London, which is raided every 35 minutes, day and night. So we hope that during the next half hour or so, we may well see some action here this evening.
We certainly do. Now, just 5 minutes ago, we received these disturbing pictures from a camera in a playground. They show an apparently innocent-looking children's game, which is in fact an exchange of drugs. There they go. And if you think about it, those two children are extremely lucky not to have been killed to bits.
The State of Britain.
1996. What is the true state of Britain? Basking in rude health?
Or sick to the guts. It's the moral-mometer now reading less than 2 morals per head, due to massive value hemorrhage. Some would say Tish and Fipsy, but others wouldn't, due to repeat woundings from weapons like this.
And what he's actually got is, well, something the shape of Great Britain. Sorry, Northern Ireland, but unfortunately it would be hard to have a bit attached. We should have tried. But it looks like it's made out of meat, or at least it wants to give that impression. I'm sure it isn't.
Yeah.
But it's in a hospital bed, so he's analysing the state of it and what state of health is it in. You want a headline, and I haven't thought of one, so this is on the hoof. Brass, highly appreciated. In the time available, that's the best I could do.
I like it, that's good.
So, yes, you're in the right ballpark. I don't quite know about the score. As I say, week I've had, the fact that I've turned up on time to record this is an achievement in itself.
Well, you haven't, have you? But, I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Well, OK, I'm running late, but 'twas ever thus. I was born 10 days late, so I've never made up the time, really.
Oh, man.
This is last week's show I'm doing. I don't know about you. I did. Shall I confess about the episode mismatch? Yes, of course, because it makes me more likeable, I like to think.
Yeah.
Although people will see my scattiness for what it actually is. I watched the wrong episode, which is why you've very patiently, may I say, with my fingers crossed, waited for me to watch the correct episode. And because I hadn't seen it for years. Is it series 2 has got the one on drugs? Or is that in series 1? Or have I confused?
No, there's only one series at Brass Eye.
No, you just said, yeah. So there is an episode on drugs. Is that 2?
Yeah, probably episode 2, is it?
Right.
I'm not sure.
See, that one I remember very well, but I will have watched all of them, I think, at the time. I think. But this one hasn't really stuck with me. But the one I watched in error, I didn't enjoy as much.
Oh, right. Do you know, you're talking about the thing with Chris Morris it's the boundary pushing, isn't it? He kind of takes you on that journey, doesn't he? You kind of, I don't know if you feel the same, but I always had that feeling that I was willing him to do something even more outrageous. I did, and it was only because I was listening on headphones. But in the first 10 seconds of this episode, somebody actually whispers the C word.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it went out without them knowing that, and I think they probably still don't know to this day.
I wonder whether didn't that become a news story, or if I just completely fabricated it in my head.
He was.
I think
always
it went out.
Story.
I think it. Well, yeah, he was in news, wasn't it? Famously, he was at the BBC in the West Country. Was it BBC Bristol, Radio Bristol?
Somebody told me, a reliable source of. We've both got friends in local radio,
low places.
BBC. Well, I used to, and somebody told me that he once filled the news booth with helium. And for people who don't know, I mean, in a radio station, normally there is a smaller room which is known as a news booth where they'll read the news bulletins from. It'll have like a couple of computers in there and a microphone. It'll be soundproofed in the same way that a normal radio studio is. But it's pretty, and they're quite big doors on these things, like thick doors that seal quite well. So there isn't a lot. I mean, if you fart in one, if you do it in a studio, it'll be there for
last
weeks.
a whole shift.
Yeah, sometimes you get. Oh, I remember that from 3 hours ago. But
you check the rotor first to see if it's you next in the studio.
And here's the thing: I used to. Do you know when I first started in radio, you could smoke in the studio. Can you imagine that? You had 20 fags during the program.
When I first started at TV Centre, it wasn't encouraged, and it wasn't anyone can smoke anywhere at any time, but it actually said, please refrain from smoking, which is a way of saying, actually, we're not banning you.
Yeah, you can
it's
smoke.
The opposite of what it appeared to be. And yeah, people did smoke. When I was training as an announcer on BBC One, the guy who you were observing first, as is often the way with training. So it's my turn to observe this guy. He starts lighting up. No, I think I was actually on air. And he starts lighting up before I'm about to go on. And I can cough for Britain with cigarettes as a non-smoker. You're an ex-smoker, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
All pious and highfalutin.
Well, you could always tell if ever, because I would always choose a record.
Gramophone disc.
There was 4 or 5 minutes long, and you could go outside and have a fag then and it was quite nice actually, because it was the only time.
Were you still smoking when I first knew you? I think you were.
Yeah, I used to.
I remember seeing you outside.
I used to go outside and have a cigarette, and it was nice because you could actually listen to yourself on the radio. Then, in a way, that's the closest you ever got, wasn't it? Really, but yeah. But anyway, so these rooms are quite sealed, and rumour has it that he got a bottle of helium and a pipe and just cracked the door open a little, and started pumping this thing in slowly.
I've heard this too. I think it's true.
And of course, the newsreader is starting to talk, and then as he's continuing, earlier today in Bristol,
ended up sounding like Elaine Page.
Yeah. And nobody wants that, do they?
I could possibly comment.
Now, whether it's true or not, I don't know. But that was the last thing he did at Bristol, wasn't it? I think he got the sack for that.
Yeah, he did at least one other jolly jape, and possibly 2. The only other one I can think of is. Actually, he nearly got it on the Today programme, is the story, or Radio 4 anyway, national broadcasting, even though it was a kind of contribution from local radio, about the cows that they couldn't kill, no matter how hard they tried. And it nearly went to air.
Love it.
So must have been an outbreak of common sense.
Do you know? And I often wonder how that line pans out. It is a line between being a pain in the bum jester and having the focus and talent that he had to go. I mean, he's gone on and directed films, hasn't he? You know, now. So he's kind of. I don't know whether he's just kind of grown up or whether, but. I don't know. You've got to have the Joker side of you, but you've also got to have the business side of you as well, haven't you? It's a strange combination with people like that.
Unfortunately, the business side of me is actually a Joker, so that doesn't really work.
And the entertaining side of you is deadly serious.
Deadly serious, so, yeah, as an accountant.
Yeah, it's
anyway, yes.
So no, I was going to say, you know, so he's there, he's trying to shock you, but he kind of takes. There's something about it. I don't know. There's something about kind of watching him at work, and I was trying to put my finger on what it was. One of the things that he does so well is that he ties reality to his fantasy, and by that I mean one of the things I saw him doing. He uses real footage. He did a tiny little thing about Terry Waite, where he does an impression of Terry Waite, doesn't he? But he shows actual footage of Terry Waite. And
well, it worked for me because I then thought the voice was, and it's all auto-suggestion, isn't it? He gives you enough clues for you to fill in the gaps, yeah.
Great one for pranking celebrities as well. I told you, didn't I? I think we've had this conversation before. My mate of mine, Nick Owen, from Anna, you know, Anna Nick, that Nick Owen. He's quite big in these parts. He's always been the kind of the anchor of the 6 o'clock local news program, and he got caught on this. I think it was the episode about heavy electricity falling out of plug sockets.
Sounds so believable, doesn't it?
Well, I said to him, Nick, what were you thinking? What you know?
He wasn't thinking, but he was probably under pressure.
And he's a really nice guy, and he's a very genuine guy. And I think they recorded it in the garden at Pebble Mill, at the back of Pebble Mill. Whereas if people remember this, you might remember in the Pebble Mill at one. Remember when they landed a Harrier jump jet in the back garden there? There was
no.
There was that was the big thing at the time. Yeah, it was quite close. Only 6 or 7 people died. It was really good the way they did it.
It's worth it, isn't it? For the
of course
spectacle.
it is. I mean, it's good telly, isn't it? You know, there are going to be casualties, aren't there? I mean, that's
bound to be.
Talk to Anthony Turner.
That's showbiz.
Yeah, exactly. And it was like, so they got him in the back garden, and you're right. They kind of get you on the hurry up. You know, we haven't got long. Can we just get this? Can we get it now? Can you just read there it is. Just read that. Just say that. And it was a kind of appeal thing as well. You know, they were appealing for help.
So he'd deliver it completely straight because he's in that mode. In fact, he's reading it to himself as almost as a rehearsal, but because they're pressuring for time, the rehearsal becomes, because he's a one-take wonder, no doubt. That's
probably. I have to say, he didn't come off as badly as some people did.
Well, I was going to say, the episode I saw, we had Carla Lane in, for goodness sakes. I mean, what's she ever done wrong apart from The Liverbirds, which I loved and fell in love with Nerys Hughes. Sadly, Carla's no longer with us, but once she'd finished her comedy writing career for the BBC, she started looking after cats. I mean, that's to me, that's pretty inoffensive, bordering on good.
Wasn't it an animal cruelty story as well that they did? So
exactly,
she's bound to do it, isn't she? You know, it's like,
well, of course, yeah.
It's easy, and there's some. In fact, there's one of the targets I've actually interviewed that we'll come to a little bit later on this episode. Mad Frankie Fraser.
I remember what you said to him, or what he said to you.
He's enforcer for the Richardsons.
They don't call me mad for nothing.
I said to him, we did it on the ISDN line, so I couldn't see him, he couldn't see me, and I said, "Hello, Frank, are you there?" And he, "Yeah, I'm here. Are you all right?" Yeah, I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I said, "We're either recording it as live, or we're going to go live in a minute, one or the other." And I said, Just one thing. I said, you don't want me calling you Mad Frankie, do you? Mad Frankie Frank. He said, no. He said, I've got a certificate to prove it.
He's been certified.
Yeah, so, but yeah, and that it didn't kind of work for me, that, because I kind of knew what he was like, and that he didn't take himself that seriously, and that kind of fell a bit flat, really, I think. But yeah, I mean, what do you think the characterizations of people? What do you? Because we've worked with lots of different journalists, presenters, and the like. See anybody you recognise?
Well, I mean, often he's playing Paxman, isn't he? Or
he
a form
yes.
of... Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Ted Moore always talks like that, and I've got the into my head. Do you remember Richard Quest from?
I know the name.
I think he was World Service. I think BBC World Service. And then he went to CNN, and he's got his own show now.
Right.
Where he talks like that.
Yeah. I know. I've seen the trailers at least.
Yeah.
And another one I think was Brian Barron, who used to talk like this. That's towards the end of this episode. Brian Barron, BBC News, Vietnam.
You can imagine him going around the BBC and other places, just collecting all these people, can't you? And kind of collecting the characterizations.
Because the more colourful, the better, obviously, for comedy.
I do wonder how much of it, though, is it a lot of inside jokes? Do you think he does a piece to camera in the cathedral, and
he's shouting,
and the cathedral's the camera's at one end of the cathedral, and he's at the other, and he's going, "And another thing about man," like really shouting his head off, isn't he? You kind of think, and I wonder whether is that too in as a joke? Do you think, or does it kind of work?
No, I don't know. Well, I think you can appreciate it in different ways, but no, it's obviously in quotes a mistake, which with him we know it isn't. So what's he trying to say?
Yeah.
I mean, they're always. I mean, a lot of these cliches, I think, were. Well, I identify them with my youth and with the 70s. That you're in a busy street and you can't quite pick out where this voice is coming from, and then they emerge from the crowd walking towards the camera. They must have felt so foolish, and then you can see people looking at them because they got a raised voice, not quite as raised as Chris Morris.
Love it. So I'm going to mention one of the other names that just comes up as like an Aston rather than like a title, like a lower third caption thing. Yeah. Which I thought, I bet they got that from looking around the office. The promoter of the band, which is supposed to be Jarvis Cocker, Pulp Jarvis Cocker thing, and the promoter's called Tascam Holiday.
Tascam with two S's, I noticed.
Two M's, isn't it? I think 2 M's.
That was it.
Tascam Holiday. Would you kind of think, I mean, Tascam obviously is a make of recording equipment.
Well, you say obviously. To some of our listeners, it may not be so obvious, especially those under 100 years old.
Well, no, people buy it. They do consumer stuff, don't they? Tascam, I think. But,
they're still doing it.
Yeah, high end stuff.
It'll be all digital, of course. But that was a manufacturer of the famous Porter Studio that everyone I knew had, 4-track cassette system.
4-track, and then you'd bounce it down to 1 track, so you got 3 tracks.
Yeah, if you could hear anything breaking through the hiss, you were doing well.
Honestly, my demo is on there, I promise you.
All you needed was a Tascam Porter Studio, a cassette tape, and a whole head of dreams.
Yeah. And electricity. Should we have another clip?
Heavy electricity, preferably.
Yes.
Clip number 2.
Like molten lead soup, I think. It kept falling out as plug sockets and killing cows. He's got this thing. He has these comfort things, doesn't he? Like cows. I think he finds cows very funny, and cows tend to be in a lot of. There was something else. I can't remember what it was now, but it'll come to me as we go on. But there's something else. I thought that's one of his comfort go-tos that he finds.
One of his handles.
Yeah, that he finds amusing. Anyway, we go to a break, as you would expect. I mean, this obviously has more power when you're not watching it online. But we go to a break, the end of part 1. And then before we come back to part 2, we have a news bulletin, and it is very much there's like a kind of rumble of a microphone. It sounds like somebody getting into a chair and they're not quite ready and all that, which was how it, it's how it was before rolling news, wasn't it? This kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we go to a special news report.
The broadcaster and entertainer Clive Anderson has been shot dead by television host Noel Edmonds at his house in Cornwall this evening. Police attended the incident but were prevented from entering the grounds by machine gun fire. From Cornwall, Vivian Banch reports.
The incident took place at around 7:30 during dinner when Mr. Edmonds produced an automatic weapon and began shooting indiscriminately at his guests.
One servant witnessed the bloodbath but managed to escape intact.
I came round the grounds, round the back way, and then got through the fence over here.
Any idea why Edmonds has done this?
No idea. He's never done it before.
An hour later, Edmonds appeared at a top window with blood on his face and threw what may have been a head onto the ground below. It is not known what happened to the other guests, but Edmonds has now taken up position on his roof with an armoury of precision weapons. Less than half an hour ago, he was seen firing a rocket launcher at a wedding party over a mile away. The estate is now surrounded, but police fear he may take to the air in a helicopter gunship and start spreading his massacre over hundreds of miles.
The world of show business has tonight reacted with sadness and horror.
Well, I just heard a rumour about it. I don't know what's happened at all.
Apparently Clive Anderson was shot.
Clive Anderson was shot by who? Not
by Noel Edmonds, yeah.
What? No.
Lovely stuff, lovely stuff. Now, where can we go with this? Oh, before I forget, it's a talkback production for Channel 4 and available on all 4. Noel Edmonds. We were slabbing, were we not, for our centenary edition, Fry and Laurie. And I was name-dropping, of course, having worked on that show, Series 1 of Fry and Laurie, a bit of Fry and Laurie. There was one show we did, I remember, there were no fewer than 3 sketches which referenced Noel Edmonds. And my favourite one was the one where, see if you remember this, because you definitely have watched all of them, I'm sure, you're a completist. And it's where they go... into the future. Is it Hugh Laurie is in the future, but it's only 15 minutes into the future. And he rings on the door. And whichever way round it is, I think it's Hugh Laurie. In my mind's eye, Stephen Fry is in the house answering the door. And Hugh Laurie says, I'm from the future. 15 minutes into the future, is Noel Edmonds still alive? And Stephen Fry says, without dropping a beat, I shouldn't think so. Anyway, I wonder if this is Chris Morris's revenge on Noel for not having a sense of humour about something else, a stunt he pulled on him. We should say, as far as I could see, there's not the real Noel Edmonds on the roof with a machine gun in this. But, of course, the real Noel Edmonds was earlier in this series in Brass Eye.
Yeah.
We've already referenced the edition.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of people, I think, tried to stop them doing it, didn't they? Once they knew what was happening. They tried to stop it going out.
they wanted to have a go at Noel for not seeing the funny side. But in a sense, you could understand his point of view.
But then you've got to ask, what's Clive Anderson done to deserve?
Well, obviously, yes, he's upset Chris Morris somehow.
Being the victim.
I don't know.
I just love the fact that what was his Noel Edmonds' staff, the guy that was interviewed this, who had never done it before.
The servant.
He was called Trevor Distance. And John Challis at the end, if you're wondering whether you knew the voice, John Challis, of course, he famously plays Boise in Only Fools and Horses.
Right.
I've only just heard. I didn't know what had happened really, but yeah. But the word I was trying to think of, the other comfort word, the thing that he finds highly amusing, which features an awful lot in his stuff. I don't know if you've ever noticed, is jam. He just loves jam. He was.
There was a whole show called Jam, wasn't there? And Blue Jam. Yeah. With 2 M's.
Earlier in this episode, he did a fly-on-the-wall documentary inside a jam factory, didn't he? Where they were, they're all taking drugs. The board of directors were all... like, his imagination almost knows no bounds, does it really?
But you know his background. It's his parents are GPs. He's had the most solid sort of upper-middle-class background. Cambridge, I think, he's from.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's off the top of my head, but
yeah, there's a lovely thing with Darkus. Darkus Howe used to be on the TV all the time, didn't he? He was a regular.
Darkus getting set up.
He sat there, and Chris Morris is saying he's stupid and ignorant. He's got nothing to say. When he does say something, he says it too loudly, and he goes on this like string of abuse. I can't remember. There's one.
The final one is, and he's probably a cocoa shunter. At which point Darkus looks
a cocoa shunter, and he says, "Oh no, sorry, I was reading out the introduction for Robert Elms."
Now he's obviously on the hit list.
Well,
for people not in the know,
Robert Elms would have worked with Chris Morris
on GLR.
On GLR, yeah, because Chris Morris,
which is Greater London Radio, or for people of a certain age, what was BBC Radio London many moons ago.
Didn't he have? He put out he put out a show on Christmas, didn't he? As the DJ Wayne Carr,
right?
And he had some jingles done that said Wayne Carr, Wayne Carr, Wayne Carr, and.
Well, he was one character in the regular show that Chris Morris used to do.
I thought he got the sack for that as well. That he went into the studios and just went, "I'm putting this on."
Right. I couldn't comment on that, but I do know that Wayne Carr was a regular character, so they obviously could live with it. GLR, was so cool. They were too cool for school in those days.
Yeah.
They'd play CDs. That's how cool they were.
Wow, man.
Far out, man.
But
far out.
Obviously weren't cool as far as Robert Elms was concerned, as far as Chris Morris was concerned, I should say.
No, unless we're taking it all too seriously, and they're the best of mates, and they found it very funny.
Yes.
One drunken night.
Yes, you don't know.
I suppose that's possible.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, there is that thing, isn't there? He doesn't seem to care how he's received by his peers.
But that's generally true of out there avant-garde artists of all sorts, isn't it, really? They're just... Yeah. You and me, we have this little committee in our head. Well, I can't speak for you. I'm not sure you have, but I've got this committee that says, can we say that? Well, I don't know. Should we refer it upwards? Well, I tell you what, we'll set up a steering committee, report back Wednesday week, and by that time, the gag's gone, and you've censored yourself. There's no inner censor, is there, in his head?
No, and I just wonder now. I was thinking about social media and the way it is. Like, there's like a kind of the social media lynch mob who come along and exact revenge and try and get people cancelled.
You sure it's not approximate revenge? You're quite sure it's exact revenge?
Exact. Well,
just checking.
It's exact as they can be, I suppose.
I suppose so, yeah. But rounded up to the nearest 3.
I mean, they call it cancel culture, but I mean, it is far more sinister than that, isn't it? They're trying to get people's livelihoods taken away from them, trying to get them sacked. And it is a kind of childish sort of reaction, but that, for me, I mean, it's really turned me off social media. And like the things I used to say on social media, I used to write on social media, I wouldn't write now, because I just don't want to engage with the kind of people who would be indignant for the kind of things that I would write. So you do wonder whether, I'm not putting myself on the same level as Chris Morris, but I'm just saying that kind of, we've never had more ability to have a voice and have freedom of expression, and yet we haven't. And I'm not sure whether...
Yeah, that's paradoxical, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's like someone in the class who makes a noise or is talking all the time, and the teacher keeps the whole class in detention. We all have to suffer because of that naughty person.
What are you looking at me for? All I do just threw a piece of paper with some ink on it. What's the matter with you? Final clip.
Yeah.
Should we have?
Yes.
Well, so far he's upset Noel Edmonds, possibly Clive Anderson. We're not really
Robert
sure
Elms.
about that one. Local TV reporters in the guise of Austin Tasseltine. So he thought, right, I'll move on to the Irish next and see if we can.
That's your lot.
See if we can sort those out. Like I say, I do kind of wonder whether he is, whether it's deliberately, whether he sits down, or even in his own mind, whether he thinks, right, who can I upset? Who takes offence easily? I know, the Catholics.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he sits down in that way and cogitates a lot. I mean, isn't he coming from the end of it, the end of the telescope, that's just what's the funniest thing for the audience? What's the most unlikely thing? And very often you get to the same answer, don't you? Because the funniest thing is the thing that takes itself the most seriously, which often is organised or even disorganised religion.
Although, the more I think about this, the less I think it has to do with Chris Morris, and the more I think it has to do with Graham Linehan and Arthur Mathews, who
the
Father Ted guys.
Connection there.
In actual fact, the father in this, the guy who played
Michael
the priest
Redmond.
in this, played Father Stone, didn't he, in Father Ted? So probably doing him a disservice there. Anyway, this is just one of those stories that these kind of programs have. It's kind of a magazine program as well, isn't it, as a sort of news digest program. And I suppose this would be the softer story, wouldn't it? This would be the human interest story that they always had at the time as well.
And finally.
Yeah, so
maybe.
So for our final clip, and finally.
Ballacreen, rural, pastoral and peaceful. The last notable event here was in 1792 when the nationalist Patrick Duggan single-handedly besieged the British Army until it starved to death. But for that, Ballacreen wouldn't bother a single map.
Or a guidebook. There's only one entry. It's less than an inch long. But all that's changed now because of that one.
Patricia O'Dennell, the local girl who says she saw the statue of Mary driving a car through a field.
Patricia, what does the statue do?
It kisses me and tells me everything will be alright with Daddy.
2 days later, Spike D'Nabony claimed the statue had driven into his garage and asked for petrol.
I thought I heard her say very quietly, fill her up. So I did. She pulled a face. Went like this.
A little bit visual, but I'll do it just for the benefit of those who can't see me. This is the face.
Oh, yeah.
Not like that. It's like that. A sort of, well, I suppose quite a round mouth, a very stressed, fixed. Help me out here.
It says mouth ajar and skew-if on the script.
Mouth ajar and skew-if, yeah, that'll do. I thought the girl actress was very good, considering she really is very young.
I love the way he kind of, I think, because he's writing sometimes, and I don't know who comes first, so I don't know who reminds me of whom, as it were. But Chris Morris and Armando Iannucci, I very often put in the same kind of surrealist camp.
The last time I've seen him, I'm not saying this is the last time he's ever been in front of a camera, but was even that's a few years ago on the Stuart Lee comedy vehicle for BBC Two, where he's doing the interstitial stuff, the interruptions, as it were, which are normally done, more than one series perhaps was done by Armando Iannucci, previously referred to. Which they don't particularly work for me, as I said at the time we slapped Stuart Lee. But it reminds me that Chris Morris is also credited as the script editor for Stuart Lee.
Right.
If not all of them, then some of them certainly.
It just shows you how seriously he's taken in the business, then, doesn't it? Really, when somebody,
Well,
Well,
I mean, you have to be pretty good to be working to be telling Stuart Lee you're not doing that joke.
Yeah.
I'm cutting that, or you should do it this way.
Yeah. Love the credits at the end. Got to mention those as well, because did you see those?
I did a double take when it said Jerry Sadowitz was, what was he credited as? Do you remember Jerry at all?
No.
That's very in, really. Or he had a TV series called The Paul Bearers Review. I would love to review it on the Comedy Slab if we could only find it.
No, I was talking about in the credits, Shoe Decisions by the Alan Price set.
Oh, yes, I did see that.
And Location Jesters, Martin Amis and Sheila B. Devotion. and then underneath runners,
I missed that one.
There were two runners, and then he put did a runner, Duncan Gray. I don't know who that was, but somebody.
Duncan Gray.
But yeah, so did a runner. Brilliant. Anyway, it's got to be that time, hasn't it, to do some number crunching.
You've given me a difficult task because I hadn't decided on a number. I've either got to frustrate your predictions. I don't know how to be true to myself now, because I don't know if there's just a mischievous part of me that doesn't want to give it 4 because you told me I would. And you know the kind of rock and roll rebel I am. I mean, I went into British Home Stores once and shouted Woolies. And,
Did you?
I was escorted off the premises.
They all thought you shouted Willies, that's why. They weren't. Your diction, darling, your diction.
Oh, sorry, darling. Right, what do I want to give it? Well, it's between 4 and my default 3.5. Regular listeners will know. I fall back on with monotonous regularity, but it serves me well. Can you do yours first? I've got to cogitate.
As I said at the start, I think this is, if there was a comedy Hall of Fame like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, this would be inducted in. There'd be no question about it, because it is. Do you remember that program Comedy Connections?
Yeah.
BBC Two. I got a few episodes. Loved it. I really enjoyed that, because it kind of told you, how things got made and who influenced.
It was the equivalent of the. You remember the Rock family trees? An artist used to do.
Yeah. That was awesome, wasn't it? They did a program about it, didn't they? There was Rock family trees. So for me, this is up there and is part of the the great comedy trail, as it were. So it's a 4 for me, no question.
I thought it would be. Thought it would be. Well, this episode, I'm going to give this episode a 4. So that's 8 out of 10 cats approve of it.
Not bad at all for Brass Eye, and as I've said so many times, because they are so gorgeously generous. You can go along and watch all 7 episodes for absolutely free. Just go along to the Channel 4 website, all 4, and just type in Brass and it'll pop up for you.
Or if you're from the south, Brass. We'd like to apologise to our listeners in the north. It must be terrible for you. Thank you, Victoria Wood. Can I just ask, just before I set your homework, and boy, have I got some homework for you. Do you think Brass Eye has changed the course of comedy? If we could possibly put Chris Morris to one side, generally, outside of the Morris set, the Armando Iannucci set, all of those, has it changed the centre of gravity of comedy, do you think, discernibly at this distance, 20 plus years on?
I think it's quite interesting, because it was on a trajectory. As I mentioned, I think we talked about this at the start, didn't we? It was originally was it the data? Was it the Day Today that was first? Oh no, On the Hour, of course, as you said, the radio.
Radio 4. I think On the Hour came first, or is it In One Ear? Was that him? Or am I confusing it?
That was probably a segment on it, wasn't it? Really, I think.
Right. Anyway, Karen.
It was On the Hour on the radio, then the Day Today, then Brass Eye. And then wasn't it Jam and Blue Jam after that?
Yeah, so radio, then Channel 4 again.
Which kind of was so surreal. It was too surreal for its own good. And I think it ruined its own trajectory in a way. It was quite interesting,
well,
I think.
I still think it's interesting, but that comes with a health warning, because it's very dark.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff in making light of stuff where you wouldn't get it to air these days.
No. And so... changed the course of comedy. I mean, when you look at the stuff that came out, I think it's quite interesting as well. It was commissioned, I think, by Peter Fincham, who was a big influence in terms of comedy. He was the guy, I think, who got Green Wing on our screens, which was like nothing else, and it's probably been like nothing else since, has it? Has been like Green Wing.
No, I don't think so.
I think in terms of its individuality, I think. What do you think, so? Then, do you think it's?
I think it's hard to say, because it's not just about comedy, it's about how society changes, doesn't it? But I was just thinking that my reference there is to Jam not being able to get some stuff on the air that Jam got on. I'm thinking that now we're in the post #MeToo era, and that sort of thing, things that were thought acceptable even 23, 24 years ago wouldn't be now. So it has to fit in around and within the culture, doesn't it? It's not an island.
I don't think Me Too and all of that is a culture. I think that's part of celebrity culture. I don't think that is. I mean, I watched I saw a news report the other day about somebody who'd been convicted of historical sex offences, and immediately in my mind I kind of thought, in what evidence was available some 35 years later that somebody was able to be convicted without a shadow of a doubt? And I do wonder when you talk to the average person in the street, when you talk to what I would term normal people, not celebrities, not people who are keyboard warriors, because they are a very different person to the person you meet on the street. They're probably the same person, but they're a different persona.
Yes.
I do wonder whether it is in our culture, or whether people just don't challenge it because they don't want the backlash. And I think there's a lot of that goes on. I think a lot of people, and that's how Boris Johnson got elected, was a lot of people thought Twitter was real life. That's how Donald Trump got elected, was because people thought social media was real life, and a small proportion of people were making a lot of noise, and a large proportion of people were just sitting back and going, well, I don't agree with that, but I'm not going to say anything because I just don't want the hassle. And that to me, so I'm torn as to what, like I say, Twitter isn't real life, is it? Facebook isn't real life.
Well, you've ruined it for me now. I thought it was. I've been tweeting all day under that illusion.
I watched a conversation on Facebook the other day, and somebody was saying about, I've lost a friend because of this, that, and the other. And somebody said, well, I wouldn't worry about it because nobody in real life has 1,800 friends like you do anyway. So,
even the term friend is corrupted. Thank you, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I've asked a question that I can't really answer to my own satisfaction, never mind anyone listening.
Good question.
But yeah, it is a good question. It's just hard to, I don't know, maybe there are these little, like a branch line that goes off and then doesn't go anywhere and doesn't have to go anywhere. It's just a nice, delicious diversion. The main line, as it were, the mainstream carries on in the same direction.
I tell you what has happened is that it's become less shocking over time, hasn't it? Things that were very shocking at the time wouldn't even get a mention now.
Yeah.
So maybe it's changed the threshold. Maybe that's its contribution.
I think it's Barbara Windsor getting her chests out, isn't it? Where do you go after that?
Yes.
There's literally nowhere to go.
Nowhere. But let's all go there anyway.
Let's all, in our imaginations,
yes.
In our fevered imaginations. Well, talking of unacceptable filth, were we? Oh, no, that was my head.
That's our new podcast.
Presented by the Derek and Clive version of me and Shane. Flip this and flip that and flip the other. It's wall-to-wall filth. That is the F word. But seriously, next week's show is not for miners or any other manual workers, especially working underground. I will have to double check for next week what the recommendation is. I strongly suspect it might be 18 and above. This is on BBC iPlayer. Or is it on Dave? Because that's the name of the show. Have you heard of it? It's very confusing if you like watching the Dave channel. Dave should be on Dave, I think, but it hasn't happened that way. It is, get this, a white Jewish guy who wants to be a big-time rap artist.
Okay.
And he moves in genuine, well, within the construct of the fiction, he moves in genuine rapper circles. And I've been watching this on the sly. I've got a reputation, which you are quite happy to put out there, of only ever watching one episode of a series. Now, I was hoping to be able to say that I'd watched all of them. I haven't. But I've watched behind your back, without your knowledge. I've been watching 3 or 4 of Dave. And I thought, well, we must put it on the slab. But the one I'm putting on the slab is just, I'm not even going to try to describe it. Some of the stuff that goes on, I should leave it at that. Anyway, so you'll find it on BBC iPlayer, but you won't find it on CBBC, the children's service. And we accept no responsibility for anyone under 18 watching it. We'll see how clean we can be in analysing it. It's just called Dave.
What is it? Series 1?
Series 1, episode 3. So in the middle, I think it's the 6th part, but anyway, it's certainly episode 3.
Well, that's it from us, isn't it, for another episode. Thank you very much indeed for having a listen. If you want to go and hunt down either of us, like the rabid dogs that we are. No, if you want to go and hunt down one of the previous episodes, then don't forget you can do that, and you can put a little reminder on your podcast catcher to wait for the next episode. Or you could do it on the social media, which Adrian will give you in a second. Don't forget we're on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, whatever they're calling it this week, and Spotify, amongst others. And we've also got like a kind of semi-video sort of thing happening on YouTube as well. Best way to find us, at Comedy Slab, for all of those.
And the social media, or anti-social media, as I will insist on calling it, which seems more appropriate, I have to say. I'm copywriting that. We are at Comedy Slab, unshockingly, on Twitter, and similarly the handle on our Facebook page is at Comedy Slab. We'd love you to follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook. Don't get it the wrong way around, because it just doesn't work in the digital age. Personal recommendations, sort of analog recommendations. Do you remember in the days when you used to be able to see people and talk to them? Well, if you could do something like that, or at least artificially reproduce it on your laptop or other electronic device, that'd be fantastic. And lastly, if you could give us a generous star rating on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, that would be fantabulosa.
So, from me, otherwise known as Calately Sisters, and him, Peter O'Hanrahan.
Chris!
You've lost the news!